You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. All right. Getting closer to Christmas at the moment and pretty excited to be able to squeeze a couple more podcasts in. And this gentleman tonight, we've spoken on our previous podcast and I absolutely love his work. Chris Burns, how are you, mate? Thanks for coming on.
G'day, Matt. Thanks for having me. Yep, I'm doing well. Close to the end of the year. Looking forward to the Christmas break. But yeah, 2024, can't wait to bring that year on and get amongst it.
Let's start by talking about your short film. That was absolutely sensational. I thoroughly enjoyed watching that. How did that come about? You worked closely with the Australian Deer Association. And just for people, can you just give them a bit of a heads up about what it is if they haven't seen it?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I was contracted to do a job for the ADA earlier in the year about the use of our public land. Public land hunting to me is a big component of my hunting journey. I don't have access to private. So, yeah, they sort of reached out to me and asked if I could do a film showing the benefits of public land hunting and how our wild deer are more than just a feral pest or, you know, what people are trying to label them as. So, yeah, I jumped at that opportunity because I'm so passionate about that. That's how I hunt. I hunt in the wilderness. I live for it, love chucking a heavy backpack on and going bush for 3 or 4 days and trying to get a deer. So it sort of worked out pretty well for me because I'm so passionate about it. But yeah, they sort of wanted to get the message out there that the wild deer, you know, although in certain pockets of Victoria and even New South Wales, they can be a bit of a problem around rural towns where we're not allowed to hunt, where hunters aren't allowed to be let in there. Populations can sort of explode around those areas, but, you know, they just want to get the message out there that recreational hunters, people go out there and utilise the animal, utilise the meat. You know, it's a resource beyond measure. Yeah, so ended up spending 5 days in the bush. We tried a new spot completely, just picked the spot in the map and completely new spot. We'd never been there. The hunting group that went there was myself and Andy, who's in the film, and another mate, Holmesy. He came along, didn't want to be showcased in the film, but he came along as well. So, yeah, three blokes out there having a good time, having a campfire, getting some fresh air, you know, just living life to the fullest. And, yeah, ended up capturing sort of that film there. It's on the ADA YouTube channel and on their social medias if anyone wants to check it out. It's sort of a short film, just briefly touching on the topic. But, yeah, I think public land, yourself too, Matt, I think you understand the value of public land access and how important it is to a lot of hunters out there in Victoria and New South Wales and even across Australia. You know, they do travel to areas that have public land access. So, yeah, it was sort of a great privilege for me to be able to put my spin on public land and what it means to me to present that to the greater public.
Yeah, look, I love the video. I thought that the way you put it together was really high quality and it just showcased the ability that some of us Aussies have in being able to go and access public land. And I've said this previously many times. I love the Victorian system that you can just go and hunt, that you don't need to book in. I understand why in New South Wales we have to book in and there's limits and whatnot because it's owned by forestry and whatnot. But it's just such a great system that you've got your huntable land that you can just go and take off. And, you know, if you've got half a day, bang, you're out there. And there's so much of it, which just, it's so important that we keep fighting to retain that as well, as you mentioned. And one of the best ways is to actually, you know, support the bigger, I guess, clubs such as the ADA and to an extent, you know, SSAA, because they are the heavyweights. And it's something I'm a bit critical of in general in saying that because there's so many smaller sort of clubs as well, everyone has their own sort of tiny piece of the pie. and then we're not united, and we then don't have as much presence when we talk about bargaining or getting more rights as hunters?
Yeah, correct. I think, some of the bigger organisations, it's great that there's other organisations coming on board and trying to put the hunting aspect forward in the space. But I do feel like the ADA, they won public land hunting access for recreational hunters as part of the deer management program in the National Parks of Victoria in, I think it was 1981. So without them fighting back then to get us recognised as part of the feral deer management program, we wouldn't have access as citizens of Victoria. We wouldn't be able to go and do the things that we do today. So organisations like the ADA, it's important to support them in their efforts. They're doing things above and beyond what we can do as individual people in that industry. They're lobbying government. They're getting the information out there so that the politicians who generally don't have an idea what recreational hunters do or what people do in the bush and how they utilise the game and stuff like that. So it's important to have that voice in Parliament or, talking to politicians and stuff like that. So supporting the ADA is one easy way for me. Like, I'm a member. It's an easy way for me to pay my finances, be a member and know that without my social media and the messages that I try to push through that hunting's important to me as an individual, it becomes a collective sort of agreement there or a collective voice when you support a club like the ADA. Yeah, I think that's very important.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that everyone has their own little niche, and I get that. And some people like smaller clubs or more local or whatever it might be. But I think when you start to do that, it starts to break into smaller chunks, and that creates a bit of an issue. I'd love to see, if we stay on the models that we do and people have smaller clubs and things like that, that there's almost like a union of clubs that come together and have one representative from each club like sitting on it and have sort of a board, so that it's still, I guess, a bit more unified than what we currently have, because we have so much diversity in the hunting community, which is a great thing. But then it also is a bit of a hindrance to us as well, because you'll have one side go, oh, I don't really hunt them, so I don't really care. Or I don't hunt that way, so I'm not too fussed. So I'm not going to advocate as strongly, but unless it was about what you want particularly to hunt like, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think that's something that the hunting community needs to get better at. And especially now, I continue to try and do my best with this podcast is to advocate and tell people and raise awareness of what is popping up and what we're facing on a day-to-day basis. And we just released an episode talking about the feral goat abatement plan, which is a sort of a revised draft that they're seeking consultation on. And interestingly, once we go into it again, there's no mention of hunters. It's all looking at poisoning and linking it with the feral deer plan and how they can work together to use poisons and poison stations. And for me, it's such a disappointment, because I don't want to see poison on the landscape. I know how valuable hunters can be. I know how important getting that meat out of the bush is, and it's not feeding other ferals. It just seems that there's this, we're going on this loop, and it's just not a great one to be on. And for whatever reason, the hunting community is not looked at as an authentic solution, which is nuts to me, because I think we're the best solution, because animals aren't dying in vain, which I don't think anybody wants to see.
Yep.
That poison's not getting spread with bycatch and the like. Yeah, it's insane sometimes. I just think that we need these bigger clubs out there and who have a bit more weight, a bit more money to throw around and really lobby, because the opposition, the antis, whatever you want to call them, they're doing it. And they're doing it very well. And even the goat abatement plan, as they call it, it's linking to the feral deer plan, which has only just been launched. Nothing's been actually put in place. And they're referencing the poisoning and they're referencing the plan, like
Yeah.
it's been a successful plan, and it's like this hasn't even been implemented. It's just been thrown together, but you're making out it's this wonderful thing, and that you've got to do the same for goats. And it's just like, well, this is an issue that we need to get in front of and have people in our, clubs and organizations and the larger community that can lobby those political organizations and politicians and governments. That's what we need to do ASAP.
Yeah, correct. I think hunters understand. A lot of the hunters understand why they do what they do and how they do it and how they go about it. But I think it's hard for us to articulate our lifestyle or our choices to get our own meat. Be self-sufficient, gather and provide for our family and friends. It's a sort of nuanced topic where if you don't have a lobby group or a conglomerate of people pushing the stone in the right direction, it is a very splintered sort of outcome. But I think, yes, the deer and also, feral game need to be managed.
Yeah.
I think hunting is a very, very big part of that, and a very cost-effective way of reducing numbers. I think the ADA release figures every year of how many deer were taken by their members and stuff like that. Like we are a big chunk of the deer management plan. We're an integral part of that. So just to be shunned out of any equation is quite devastating, really. Like I think the latest figures were something like 250,000 deer were shot by hunters last year.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's a fair chunk of, we're doing our bit for conservation and the environment. It's very, it's hard to swallow that the people in power that make the decisions aren't really on board with the fact that the general public are doing a good job managing the animals that they believe are feral and doing massive damage to the environment. Not long ago, goats were worth a fortune, and you couldn't get
Yeah.
on a property to hunt goats. Like all of a sudden the goats are worth peanuts.
Now they're just wanting to poison them.
Yeah, you're going to throw baits out and poison.
And I think it's a very political thing. It's the time to strike at the moment because they're not worth much, and especially going into that bit of drier time that we're facing, they're just going to be competition for farmers. So the farmers aren't going to want them on the landscape. So I think it's been a very well-timed release of the plan going forward. And hey, look, the one thing I've always said about our opposition is they're playing chess, and I sometimes feel we're playing checkers because they're just a couple of steps ahead of us, and how they strategically drop things and do things is very good. And you've got to give them, credit for that. And we've just got to get better. And we've got to have, got to be a bit louder, because there are some really great examples of conservation. And I want to talk to you about that, because we were talking during the hog deer ballot.
Yes.
And that is the perfect example of a great system that you have to pay for. It's not much money, but there's a heap of entries. It goes towards conservation. It's a great model. I love it.
Yeah. I think with the hog deer, it's a very unique situation that we have in Australia. I believe we're the only country that can hunt free range public land hog deer. And yes, it's not ultra successful. It's a lot easier to go out and get a sambar deer in decent sambar country than it is to get a hog deer on public land. However, that ballot system has created an opportunity for people to throw. I think it was last year might have been $25 to put your hat in the rink of drawing a ticket for like premium hog deer. They're shooting pretty good stags and seeing deer every day. What an adventure it is to travel over to an island and you're there with 5 other dudes, and it's a really cool sort of concept that the Blonde Bay ballot system is. And I believe that if there's more awareness around the fact that hunting can generate vast amounts of income to organisations and produce the outcomes that they need for feral deer management or feral game management or whatever they'd like to label these animals. I personally don't think that they're a feral species. They're mostly utilised. They're more of a resource than a feral game animal. However, yeah, we're working with the system that's in front of us. But yeah, I ended up throughout that hog deer ballot, ended up watching it through Facebook, I think, and my name got called out as, I think it might have been like period 3, Snake Island. And mate, I nearly jumped out of my chair
Yep.
when I heard my name. And then they were like, oops, sorry, wrong name. Oh, mate, I was
Ah,
shattered, absolutely shattered. That at least I knew my ticket was in, my name was in the hat. But yeah, I was so shattered that it wasn't me.
I messaged you and said, "Is that you?" And then I think I'd sent it practically before he then said, "Oh, I've made a mistake."
Yeah,
So they went to a new system, and I think it's important to say, like, I have always watched the draw, and this year they tried a new system. It was electronic, and I think they were just on some random wheel. And I think the way they did it was matching a number, maybe the ticket number, with someone, so he then would look at a spreadsheet and then announce the name.
yeah,
And I'm guessing that, that can be quite difficult, in fairness. If you've got this massive spreadsheet, you've got a bit of time constraint trying to scroll through, see the
yeah,
number and catch it. I'm guessing that's how things went wrong, because it wasn't just you, there was a couple.
yeah.
And yeah, man, that must have been a roller coaster of
Oh,
emotions that
mate,
time,
yeah,
saying, because it
100%.
was the perfect time to get drawn.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like high in the ballot. Yeah.
Oh, I was gutted for you. I'm not going to lie.
Mate, it was absolutely crazy.
Oh, and then I did say to you, though, I had a feeling you were going to go all right, and
Yeah,
your name was coming.
yeah.
And tell us about that.
Yeah, so I ended up watching the whole thing just thinking, lucky my name's in the ring, lucky my name was called out. It's there. And I ended up getting, I think it was position 10 emergency for Snake Island. And, they were like, make sure you answer your phone. So I've been answering every call, getting all the prank calls, the scammers. Yeah, I pick up every single time I pick up the phone, just hoping that it's Blonde Bay, the dog deer ballot, asking me for, whether I'm available or not. But I still haven't got the call. I think the first period might be February. So it might be done and dusted, but I'm still holding out hope that I get that phone call.
Well, he did say, don't quote me, but I'm sure he said that like 18 reserves got calls last year.
Yeah,
I think it was a really large number,
yeah,
because and when you said you're number 10 or whatever, I said, if it's like last year, you'll be definitely in with a
with a
really good
chance.
shot.
Yeah,
Yeah, so fingers crossed it's
yeah,
not over, because we're mid-December, so there's plenty of time left on the clock.
yeah. So I still got to answer those scammers every every call. But I do think like that hunt as well. Like logistically, it's on an island. You're dictated to by weather. You got to get a boat out there. There's a lot of nuanced sort of aspects to that hunt. So if you're interstate, you may not make the training day prior. So it can be quite a tricky scenario, tricky hunt to participate in. But yeah, it's obviously a premium sort of opportunity. And sure, if I got drawn, there's no way that I'd be giving that up. I'd be making every opportunity that I could to get there.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, the weekend, the education weekend that they call it, which I think is another great idea. I think that is the tricky thing for some people, because they were drawing people from WA, Northern Territory. So it's quite a variety of people getting selected. And that then adds to it because, especially at the moment, I think financially everybody's doing it a little bit harder
Yeah,
because, interest rates and just the cost of living's gone through the roof.
yeah,
So unfortunately, there might be a few people there going, hey, I just can't afford to fly from WA to Victoria twice
yeah,
to do an education weekend and then go back for the hunt, because
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
too much money,
yeah, correct.
which sucks.
Yeah,
You'd hate to be in that position. I feel for anyone that would have to give it up,
yeah,
but I can see it happening as well, because it's just the current state of affairs here in Australia.
yeah, correct. I think there's probably like if going back to the whole COVID sort of scenario where a lot of businesses developed a different way of doing business via Zoom, or there's a lot of apps out there now. Maybe there's an opportunity to do that educational course via a Zoom conference as well. I'm not sure what the legalities are or anything like that about that education weekend. I think the education weekend is quite pivotal to actually physically be there and to get feet on the ground and see the terrain and understand what the boat, how to get the boat, what operators are there to get you there and back, and who can take the hunters over there. So I think physical boots on the ground is vitally important, but there may be an opportunity where it could be remotely in the future. But I think currently that hunter education is vitally important to get there, to get the lay of the land and to get the information you need to have a successful hunt.
You're right. The only thing I'd say is maybe after this year's ballot, with the minor mistakes using a bit of technology, they might shy away from any future technology. Just keep it how it is, just to be safe.
Yeah, so. I think I saw some comments on the post. They were like, "You should go back to how it was." Like there was less names getting called out that were incorrect. Go back to how it used to be. But I suppose if you did things like you used to do, there'd be no progression. And I'm glad that they're trying to develop and keep up with the times, So, yeah, it was a little bit disappointing and it wasn't me. I think the guy's name that got called out was like Burgess or something, and my last name's Burns. So it may have been like an alphabetical thing where he was the next bloke under me and our numbers were so close or whatever. But yeah, gee, I was disappointed when they were like, no, not Chris Burns, it's the other bloke.
I use a lot of those things as a teacher, and there's one that's brilliant. I think the hunting club uses it as well. It's just a random name generator, but it's on a wheel. So you just click it and it spins around and then it pops up on the screen, and you could have the ticket number and the person's name so that you didn't have to then go and consult anything else. I reckon that's probably the way to go for them in the future, because they could almost even have it live. They could put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
So you can still have them talking and whatnot, but you could also actually see the wheel too and see what's popping up, so people can see the name being drawn. And I know there was I think he mentioned there's a couple of comments about it being sort of rigged and whatnot. And I definitely don't think that's the case. Rigged. But, something like that takes that out of it. If you're doing a live draw and you're using that random wheel, it's easy. You see it. Like, there's no questions that people can't say, oh, you rigged it. It's just very transparent. I reckon that's probably the way to go for them in the future and make life easier, not harder, not having to, cross-examine two different sheets and have what happened. But, hey, that's part of it.
That's right.
You're one ahead of me. I didn't even it's multiple years now, and I definitely haven't had my name called. I think Cody Guerin he's been 10 years in and still hasn't got it called. So it's just one of those things. You got to get lucky, and that's sort of excitement about it too. Like I always watch the draw. It's pretty exciting. That, hey, you've got the chance to get on this mad adventure.
Yeah. 100%.
And this is for $25. It's like a bit of a lotto. It's great. I think it's a really good system. I love it. I wish there was more of it, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. I'm the same. I was a bit skeptical many years ago until one of my mates got drawn. He got drawn, it might have been 2020. Yeah, it could have been 2020 or 2021. I think they might have cancelled 2020 and they did 2021. He got drawn 2021 and went over and was successful, and then he got drawn again in 2022. And I was like, I've been putting in for so long and never had my name read out, thinking that it was a boys' club or, whatever it might have been. And if you don't get drawn, and then my mate got drawn, and I said, well, he's no different to I am. Like he's obviously in the ballot, he's put his hat in the rink as much as I have. And then the next year, obviously my name got called out this year as an emergency. So, it sort of reiterates that the system works. It is there. It's in place, and it's all fully above board. There's no boys' club. Although they know a lot of the, obviously ADA members are going to put in for the ballot. They go to meetings every month or whatever it might be. And they'll put in for tickets, and guys will know each other. The hunting industry is quite small. So for them to say during the broadcast that, oh, we know that guy, he might be a club member at the same club as he is, so it's definitely not a boys' club. And if you buy a ticket, you're just as likely to win as I am, there's however many spots and however many people put in, you're a chance.
Yeah, most definitely. I think I was shocked at, I think he said this year there was only like 1,500 to 1,600 entries.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite low.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, geez, that's when you think about how I think they draw 250 spots
Yep.
across all three areas
Yep.
and then reserves as well. I was like, that's a pretty
Yeah.
big chunk. Like you're getting, I think 15% roughly off the top of my head was about the chances of getting your name drawn. And you
Yep.
can only get it drawn once,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's pretty good odds as well.
Yep.
I was actually shocked. I thought there'd be a lot more entries. A lot of them are from people from Victoria, which makes sense because local, it's easy, it's not very costly.
Yep.
Yeah, very interesting seeing that and hearing some of the things that were going on down there.
Yeah.
That was I think, but mate, I'm hoping you do get drawn,
Yeah.
get that phone call, and get over there because the big question, if that happens, I know how much you love filming. What's the go there? Are you going to try and get someone to come over and film you for a change? Is that going to be what happens?
Well, I actually, a couple of years ago, there was like COVID caused the perfect storm. They suspended duck season because historically duck season sort of coincided with hog deer season. So duck season started usually about 2 weeks out before the hog deer season started, and then you'd have duck hunters shooting the same areas that you would hunt hog deer in through the month of April when you were allowed to publicly land, when you were allowed to legally hunt the hog deer. So you were always battling with the conundrum of hunting these hog deer around the same spots as the duck hunters. And in 2020, I ended up, oh, was it 2021? Might have been 2021. Anyway, whatever year it was, I ended up going public land and getting a hog deer stag. I put it down to the fact that there was no duck hunting for that year, but ended up working on some intel I got many years ago and got a public land hog deer stag. So I was over the moon about that. But I think with the ballot system, you go in like most of the guys who go there are successful. It's a lot. I wouldn't say easier to hunt. You've still got the conditions and wind and moon phases and all the stuff that sort of affect deer movement that you've got to contend with. But when I put my money down for that hog deer ballot, it's yeah, I watched that show, I watched that Facebook stream intently, just hoping that I draw, just for the adventure of it. I
Yeah.
think that I hunt for adventure. Part of the reason, like I love getting the meat, but I do love the fresh air. I love the adventure. I love camping out under the stars. Yeah, I think that for me is like the ultimate adventure. You're on an island, you're getting a boat out there. You're you're basically remote. You're cut off from civilization. I'm not sure if you've got cell phone reception there. It wouldn't bother me, but yeah, I would love to have that experience. And every year I put my $25 in or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. I'll make it work. And like you said, you've got better chances of drawing a hog deer tag than you do of winning Tats Lotto. So
Yeah.
people spend a lot of money on Tats Lotto.
100%. And as you said, the experience, that's what draws me to look at it every year. I just sit there and go, the chance to, I'd love Snake Island if I got drawn because it's that adventure, getting the boat across, having your little stand and, it sounds so exciting. And I loved the Beyond the Divide episode where he was over there and that was so good to watch and see that. So it is there on my list. I really do hope I get it one day. And hey, if I don't, I don't. That's how life works too.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be a part of the conservation and playing a part in such a great cause. I mean, that's a positive anyway.
Yeah, I think the awareness too, that group can bring to the hog deer population. I think when I did get my hog deer stag, one of my goals was to self film it, and oh my god, that was hard. Like I documented what I could, and it was taking away from my hunting efforts. Like it never came to the point where I could make a video about it, but I did take some decent imagery of myself, but it was quite tricky and a bit of a conundrum. And then when it worked out, it was the lighting was no good for photography or videography. So I ended up just the hunter in me took over. I put the camera down and ended up taking the stag. So yeah, I think back to your question earlier, if I was to get drawn or called up about being in the emergency at Snake Island, I would take the camera, but I don't know if I would be using it as intently as I would with my binoculars or I'd be the hunter first over getting content. Yeah, I think that opportunity lends to you're there as the hunter. You can go to Snake Island it is public land. You're allowed over there out of season. Obviously not to hunt, but you can get over there if you've got a boat or if you want to hire a boat. You can get there and experience it as a public. Any citizen can. However, if you get drawn for that ballot, I think I'd end up putting the camera away. Or maybe take the camera out of season rather than during season.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, it's pretty exciting. I really do hope you get drawn, get the phone call, I should say, sorry. And, excited to hear how you go if that does happen. But anyone out there that got drawn and is head over, best of luck. I am super excited to see some of the photos and hear some of the stories in the future because I thoroughly enjoyed that part as well.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I'm also, whoever got drawn, I hope you can make it, even if you're interstate, whatever. Just, I hope you get there and have the experience. Yeah, I think it would be a great experience.
Mate, you've had a big year. You've got a lot of stuff out there, some really good content, some great footage, some great photos with a lot of really good brands as well. Do you want to run through who you're working with at the moment? Because there's so much out there. And for people that haven't seen what you're doing, just give them a bit of a heads up.
Yeah, so I started the year doing a fair bit of stuff during the rut with Ridgeline. Ended up filming Jared Matthews on a hunt in New South Wales. Ended up being on private land and ended up getting a really, really good fallow deer. That sort of kicked off the season. And then I sort of did some self sort of documenting on my own fallow deer experience, trying to find a spot for the rut, and didn't quite work out as well as I would hope. Pre-rut there was a heap of deer, but during the rut I didn't hear a croak, not a thing. So it was sort of the tale of two sort of stories. I sort of thought I was on the money. I picked a spot on the map, and luckily in Victoria we can do that. As long as you're in legal sort of hunting areas, you can just pick a spot and go whenever you feel like it if you're keen enough. Picked a spot, saw some deer, ended up taking a spiker for meat prior to the rut, and then went back during the rut, hoping that my kids could hear a couple of croaks and stuff like that, but didn't see a deer while I took the kids there for the rut. But anyway, I digress. I ended up working for Crispy, the boot company, Italian boot company. They have like handmade boots for basically the hunting industry. They're great boot, absolutely phenomenal boot. Yeah, ended up going to the Northern Territory with them to document a bantang hunt. So we ended up going up there with Nick Joyce from the Last Frontier Safaris. And mate, that hunt was epic. Like if you could think of, I put it down like it's basically the only wilderness hunt, guided wilderness hunt that you could probably do. Besides maybe sambar deer in Victoria, there's not too many guides that offer like a wilderness experience that Nick does up in the territory for bantang. Like that was amazing, and I think the content that come out of that was like next level. Picturesque sunsets, and when I rocked up to camp, I was like, "Are we actually hunting? Like this feels like a beach holiday. Tourists would pay bulk money to come and spend a week on the beach here. Like besides the saltwater crocs potentially coming up and taking a chunk out of you, but yeah, we got there. It was like absolutely phenomenal. Like changed me as a human. Like that place was just crazy. Everything I'd hoped for. I couldn't have imagined something so good. But yeah, the bantang hunt was amazing for Crispy, and also photographed some sunglasses there, Skeleton Optics, which are released now in Australia as part of that particular hunt. They decided to launch in Australia as well. So yeah, that was probably the biggest highlight of my year. And then after that, working with the ADA with the public land story, that little documentary, that short film that I did. That was even rewarding too, because that's my home ground. That wasn't out of my comfort zone. That's the type of hunting that I do whenever I get a chance to. So that backpacking style, going remote for 2 or 3 days. That particular hunt was a 5-day hunt. Yeah, so yeah, had some very, very rewarding opportunities this year with brands and through my photography and videography, and I think I grew both as a hunter and also as a content creator in that outdoor space. So yeah, it's been a really good year for me, and yeah, stoked that brands have been able to trust me with providing the content that they require from each project that we've sort of undertaken.
Anyone that's seen your work, it'd be no shock as to why people want to work with you, because it is quality. I thoroughly enjoy every time I see something come up on Instagram that you post. I'm always tuning in and watching it. If it's a video, is for the whole thing.
Thanks,
Or a
mate.
couple of times. That's the other one. I know I wanted to refresh tonight to watch the public land story because it had been a while since I watched it. And I went, I'm going to watch it one more time before we have a chat tonight. But it is just great. I just loved how you presented the whole thing, and it's quite unique. So I did share it to mine. If you haven't anyway, I'm going to put Chris's details in the show notes and jump on anyway, and we'll get him to talk about it at the end. But mate, so it's been a great year for you, obviously. What is coming in 2024?
Yeah, so there's obviously some stuff I can't talk about. It's very tight-lipped, but yeah, I've got some stuff happening in January and yeah, some new releases of products and stuff like that. Obviously, you're pretty tight-lipped on any sort of new products and new stuff coming to market. So yeah, excited to have a plan to capture some content in January for a few brands, and also February is quite exciting for us as well, leading into the rut, which obviously kicks off sort of, that's pre-rut, the stags, the bucks are rubbing out sort of thing. So yeah, there's a bit of intel getting developed early in the year, but yeah, just looking forward to, yeah, obviously this time of year, everyone's pumped up about the rut or the raw, whichever one you've got access to. So yeah, it's exciting times ahead, that's for sure.
I completely agree with you, because I'm sitting here really tossing up which way to go, because I loved hearing the croaking last year, but I've always really wanted to hear a roar as well.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to work out what way I can do both this year and how it all fits together and where on public land. And it's part of that adventure too, isn't it? Just trying to work out, hey, when am I doing what and how much time can I actually spend out there? And it's sometimes a bit difficult with a young family, but hey, that's part of life. And I've got plenty of years ahead of me to keep chasing this. So it's I'm hoping, I'm still trying to work it out, trying to, put the final touches on the plans and work out, hey, this is going to lock in and have a crack at it this year. But either way, I'll be getting out there, and that's going to be just sensational. I can't wait. But 100%. Hopefully a buck will be on the cards this year. I'd love to get one, especially on public land.
Yeah.
So that'll be what I'm probably leaning towards after last year. It was just so exciting, and just hearing so many croaks and whatnot. And there's a couple of new forests I want to check out. So I think I'll probably have a crack at that. And then even the ballot system for state forests up here, that's taking place in January. So
yeah, right.
Usually it's already done and dusted by now.
Yep.
And they've pushed it back. And the reason is it was so far out, they found people were pulling out and things like that, because it was so far into the future that, things happen as they do. And they were finding that was a bit of an issue. So they've pushed the ballot now back into January. It's free as well if you are an R license holder. And yes, I'll be excited. Hopefully might be able to jag one of those spots in Manus or Mooragle South and see what happens down there. That'll be exciting. I have got one. I did get it before, but I got the last week as a reserve. So it was the actual rut, was well and truly over.
Yeah,
and
right.
They'd had a lot of hunting pressure. So it wasn't ideal time to be in there.
So that ballot system, is that just over the rut?
Yeah, so the ballot system works from, I think it starts, don't quote me, but I think it's like the 1st of March. And then it might even go all the way to pretty much the end of April.
Yep.
And you get 4 days in the forest.
Yep.
And they break it down. So 4 days, and that's how it's chunked out.
Yep.
And they do it in Mooragle South State Forest, Manus State Forest, and then there's the bow-only section for Manus State Forest as well.
Yeah, right.
And that's generally a pretty sought after one because they're pretty good
Yep.
spots. I mean, all that area down there on the south, sort of, Snowy Mountains way is just beautiful country as well. So it's a really good one. I thoroughly loved the last time I was there. It was just such a great experience just getting out there. I didn't see anybody else in there. I think there was 2 allowed in the section I was in, and I did see the car of someone, and I heard a shot one night, and I know he had meat bags hanging up the next day, which was exciting for him.
Yeah.
But, I was driving past very early in the morning, and he was having a sleep in because he obviously got the job done. So, and then by the time I came back, he was well and truly gone. So I never got the chance to have a chin wag. But great spot, just great area. I'm super excited, and I think that was very early on in my hunting journey too. So I've learned a lot since then.
Yeah. How has it been going?
Yeah, I got me first deer, got a Roosa hind. So
Unreal.
that's that episode's been recorded because I did it with my mate Dan, and who was there, and he's been on the whole journey because it was on private property.
Yep.
So that was exciting, and we go through the whole thing. That hasn't even dropped yet, so it will have by the time this episode airs. But that was super exciting. So I was very, very happy to do that. It was such private's so different to public. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Like it was it was the first time we'd been to the property and literally walked maybe 60 to 100 meters to an area where we knew they sort of frequented, and they were there. And just snuck in on a hind, was perfect, nice safe backdrop. They didn't really know I was there till the last minute. Got the the Ridgeline tripod set up, got it rested for about 80 meters, maybe 100, somewhere in that vicinity.
Got him tight.
Yeah, and just straight through the chest and dropped it in 20. And then it was beautiful. Yeah, chucked the deer on the gator and took it back up so we could, get to work on it close to the car, and happy days. Farmer was happy. We were happy. And it actually took longer to get dinner on the way home and takeaway than it did to get the deer. But it's just a different level. I was just like, oh my God, I haven't had much private and haven't been on especially deer blocks. So this was such an eye-opener that it was like just rock up, like have the spots that you know where they are on the property. The wind was right, go for the walk. Yep, one's there, or there's 2 there, bang, done, happy days. So it was very different. But I think there's also the differences between how thick the bush is as well. It was so much easier spotting deer.
That's it.
And then being able to stalk in. And that was also good because I always sort of sit there and you question yourself as a hunter and whatnot. I know I'm not a good hunter. I've never professed to be. So it was nice to sort of go, okay, well, I was able to get in relatively close. I was able to, put a really good stalk on. And, I haven't had that opportunity that much in a state forest. I see glimpses of animals sort of things. So it's a bit different. So I got to probably get better at spotting them in a state forest on public land. But it's, it was really good. So 2023 will end with a deer, and I'm happy about that. So the next 2024, I'm hoping it will just keep the ball rolling and keep learning and keep putting things into place, and happy days.
100%. Congratulations, mate. Yeah.
Cheers, man.
Got one on the ground, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come, because that venison is absolutely sensational.
Oh, man, I had it 3 days in a row last week. It's just been unbelievable. I love cooking and being able to turn it. I've made jerky. I've done, just different steaks and stir fries, and it has been sensational. It's a payoff.
It's a part of the whole thing. Like, I don't go to Coles or to the butcher shop and just ask for a chunk of meat and I see what I can do with it, it's that whole journey. Once you take that deer, you're busy on YouTube looking how to cut it up or what cuts are what, and it's a whole learning process after you are successful, and that's exciting as well. It's not just learning about how to track the game, find the game, if you're in the right area, the moon phases, the weather conditions, being proficient with the weapon that you're using, you've got that part of the journey at the front end, but then there's a whole other element of learning to butcher, learning to
Yeah.
cook, provide, it's a whole holistic approach to that whole journey, and you do it with a smile on your face. It's not easy to butcher a deer when you don't know what you're doing. It takes some time.
I completely agree. I thoroughly enjoy the whole process. And what I found is that I am so much more thankful, but also so much more, what's the word for it? That I limit wastage
Oh yeah, yeah,
because I know how long it's taken to get the first deer. And for me, I don't want to see any of the meat go to waste. So
yeah,
I took as much as I possibly could, kept the hide for me mate for his dog, as much as possible. Pretty much so much went to my dogs that I
yeah,
couldn't use for myself. Went halves with my mate, and he took his lot. That was just, yeah, it was just the whole experience. And then every time I've sort of made something or done something, I've sent photos to me mate as well. And
yeah,
he sent one over tonight. Actually, he did made some venison ribs,
yeah.
and that's cool to see too, because I go, oh, all right. Well, I know we cut up the ribs with recip saw. I got some stainless steel blades that are food grade for that.
Yep.
And so that was good. And except he hacked half the backstrap off. Shout out, Dan.
Oh
Good job.
no, no.
Look, I have definitely got to get a better system. We just did it on the plastic table. I've
Yeah,
got to work out now that I'm gonna get onto more deer and things like
yeah,
that. I do want to start having a better setup and being able to hang it and being able to skin it, while it's hung, and
yeah,
pull it
yeah,
apart while it's up, because
yeah,
it is difficult on that table.
yeah,
Was far better with two people. It was that's the second time I butchered a deer. That was far
yep,
better than with two people, because just being able to move it around and
yep,
break apart the different parts that need to come off, that helped. But
yep,
yeah, most definitely I want to hang it up. That's definitely the way to
yeah,
go. So I'm looking at those little things, but there hasn't been the need to. So
yeah,
now that I've
yeah,
sort of like,
yeah,
oh, that's good, and we've got some access and things like that, I'm like, oh, that's might be something worth investing in now and
yep,
doing that. But yeah, that's been cool, seeing that, knowing the whole story. Like, you don't sit there when you're eating some beef ribs and go, how were these cut up? Where did this come from? But seeing that and going, okay, we got that here, and we were up to 1
yeah,
a.m., cutting it up and
yep,
quartering it and whatnot. And then the next day I did 8 hours on the cryovac and cutting him into the
yeah,
cuts I
yeah, yeah,
wanted. And
yeah,
it's just been awesome, because I sit there
yeah,
and go, knowing the whole story and how
yep,
much time and effort, not just the trigger, not just the hunt, that there's so
yep,
much afterwards, and people miss that.
yeah,
It's one of those things they miss. I really like at the moment what I've seen a lot of people doing is taking a photo with sort of their hand on the animal and
yep,
then showing what they've turned it into.
yeah, yep.
And I was looking, I haven't caught it yet, but I'm going to. I just saw the post about it. It was with Robbie Kroger's Blood Origins
Righto.
podcast.
Yep,
He had, I think, a gentleman, one of the heads up of the Sheep Foundation over in the States. I think the gist of it was, and don't quote me exactly, but I read it quickly, was that they're going away from the sort of grip and grin photos,
yep,
and they're wanting
yep,
to step aside from that, because it's they've got their reasons. And I believe the podcast is them going back and forth on why or why not.
yep,
I had a really interesting conversation with a non-hunter about it, because hunters get the grip and grin.
yeah,
Anyone
yeah,
that's not a hunter doesn't.
no,
They just, it's pure and simple. You're standing over a dead animal and you're happy. They don't.
they can't comprehend it. Yeah,
No, and they don't care. Let's be honest too. That's the other thing. So I sort of look at it and go, okay, that's upsetting to people that are non-hunters. Is it a disservice to the hunting community if we keep doing those and people are exposed to those things,
yep,
when we could potentially do it another way and do, like I mentioned just before, when people are taking a photo with their hand on the animal, almost saying thank you, which a lot
yep,
of us do. I know I
yep,
do.
Yep.
and then turning that into what the cuts of meat are and the dishes that it's gone to. So there's a lot more story to it, but it's much more palatable for people that are not hunters as well. I think that it's an interesting topic, an interesting discussion.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I think it's, as hunters, we know the amount of effort that goes into that grip and grin. We know it. We know you've had misery, rain, you're wet, you're tired, you've hiked, you've gone on maybe a year, maybe 2 years without getting an animal, and you sit there and you finally become successful, and you know what the reward is because you get to take that meat home and you get to provide that meat to your family. You get to cook it knowing how much effort went into getting to that deer. And so you sit there with a smile on your face and you're stoked, you're absolutely over the moon because you know what the outcome is. It's not the fact that you've
killed something,
shot that deer and you've killed it. It's not it's not the bloodlust or, otherwise you would end up, going pest control and shooting them out of a chopper like they're doing, and leaving them to rot. That's not what we're about. We are providing, and we know how bloody tasty those animals are. Let's face it.
Delicious.
And you're happy that you're successful. You're not always successful, and you're happy that you can take that deer home and you can provide that meat for your family. You can stock your fridge up. During stuff that happened with the coronavirus, supermarkets were bare of meat at one stage. The vegan friendly stuff, the burgers that aren't burgers were still on the shelves, but
no one wants that.
No one wants that. But I was still smiling because I knew that as a hunter, my freezer, if it wasn't full, could be full. You could go out and provide that gap of a service that modern society has at the moment. Yeah, you can go out and source your own meat. You can be the person that provides your family with meat rather than just going to the supermarket. I don't think I've never left the supermarket smiling that I just spent $250 on meat. I'd much rather spend $250 on hunting, petrol and in a small town community, buying a pie or whatever on the way out, and hunting my own $250 worth of meat than having someone else do it for me. So I think that grip and grin. Look, obviously hunters follow my page, and those grip and grins do extremely well with the social media. They get the likes, and I think it's because hunters understand. But I do understand also that coming from a non-hunter's perspective,
they can't fathom it.
Why would we? Yeah, why would we be so happy? And I think that's where my photography style or the stories I try to tell through my imagery and through my videos are more around the fact that there's more to it than just that grip and grin, that one moment of having that animal on the ground. There's way more benefits holistically than taking the life of that animal, I still get, obviously give thanks to the animal. I may not say it out loud, but, every time I touch that animal, it's going through my mind that, thank you, you're going to provide for my family. There's no greater, I don't think personally, there's no greater way of respecting that animal than to put in the work to take that thing off the mountain and provide it to your family, So, yeah, you might be able to call, I love animals. I've got quail in my backyard. I've got chickens in my backyard, and I absolutely love animals. I love the wilderness. I love the wildlife. I love animals, but I also know that those animals are tasty. That those deer in particular are tasty, and it's great for me mentally, physically, emotionally to get out there pursuing them. I don't have to be successful every time, but when I am successful, I'm pretty stoked that I can take 50 odd kilos of organic, free range, premium protein home to my family. I just had a round roast from a samba tonight. Makes me extremely happy to be able to provide that for my family.
Yeah, I see both sides. One of the things I always try to do is take my hat off, whatever camp I'm in, and try and see it from the opposition or the opposing viewpoints. And I get both sides of it because they don't have the understanding of what it is. And there's still a lot of people that think when hunting is literally shooting, that you rock up and it's like shooting fish in a barrel. It's, the poor animals, they're defenseless, and that you're just this big cruel hunter shooting a lot of things. And it's like, well, you haven't been hunting. They can come out with me because, it's definitely what's it take. I started chasing deer in 2018 and it's 2023 and I've got my first one. So it's been a long time. Okay, COVID was in there too, so you got to take out that period where we couldn't leave. But let's still call it 4 years as a journey. That's been a long time coming. And it's an interesting one for me because when I got the animal, the grip and grin really didn't even go through my mind. Mind you, it's a hind. And then also the farmer was there. Yeah. And it was the first time we've hunted on his block. And it did go through my mind of, do I really want to take photos which he could think's distasteful?
Yeah, yeah.
He might not like, and then that could cost us access.
Yeah.
So it was very much an interesting thing. And it came out on the podcast. I don't even remember saying it, but the first things out of my mouth and in the celebration was, I said, "We've got meat." That was what I was jumping up and down saying. So, I mean, you know where my head's at. It's all about the meat for me. But I was really, it wasn't something a lot of people went, "Oh, we want to." There wasn't many photos, I'll be honest. I think I took 2. Yeah. And one was just where I found the animal, and it was not sort of a nice photo where I positioned or anything like that. It was just like, there's that, just want to take the photo just because that's where I found her. And just from my memory, it's not really one. I probably won't ever post it on social media, to be honest. So it's very interesting. And I never even thought I'd be thinking about some things like that, like with the property owner, do I want to be taking photos? Yeah, it was a very unique sort of part of it that I didn't even think about before it all happened. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way personally. I think people are going to be offended by something anyway in this world we live in now. But I'm really keen to hear this podcast on it and hear their viewpoints and why because I think the Sheep Foundation, they're not showing those kill shots and they're not showing grip and grins as much anymore with their awards nights. I think that's what it was coming down to. So I'm really interested to hear the perception and breakdown on that and where they go into it. So that'll be interesting. So looking forward to that.
I think the grip and grin in the past has been used to hurt hunters.
Yeah.
So I can understand a foundation trying to get away from the grip and grin style photos. However, like you were saying with your hunt, unless you've got a photographer there who's thinking about the imagery, you're caught up in the moment. You're living that moment out, the last thing you're going to think about is taking an aesthetically pleasing image, that's going to be used for a magazine or you're not even thinking about the ramifications of that photo getting published in the social sort of environment. So and nor should you. You're busy focusing on the goal of what you're doing. You're hunting an animal. You're trying to get meat for the freezer. You're enjoying that experience for your own personal reasons. You shouldn't be concerned about showing it to others or treading on people's toes or stuff like that. But I can understand how foundations are getting away from that grip and grin style imagery. It just hurts. It can be used to hurt hunting without perspective or without the forestory or the backstory or it's a very, very tricky and that's where I've tried to be a little bit different with my content where yes, we're hunting and yes, the end goal is to take the life of an animal, but it's more about everything else, the journey getting there rather than that one particular microsecond of the whole experience. And I think if more people can try to think of ways of showing their respect to animals a little bit better, I think it's better for the hunting fraternity as a whole, The grip and grin I still take many grip and grin photos. It's just whether or not I publish them in a public forum. It's sort of a personal preference whether you want to put them out into the public space or not. But I'm sort of the opinion that if it's not going to benefit hunting, I try not to personally post it. If I feel that it could be detrimental to public land access in the future, I think we're custodians or stewards for the next generation. I don't want to do anything that will jeopardise my children being able to experience the things that I experience. In Victoria, I'm incredibly grateful that I can throw a dart at the map of Victoria, pick that spot, and if it's legal hunting and I've got my deer stalker's license, I can get in there and live my dream. It's not everybody's
Yeah.
dream, but I want to be able to allow my children to choose that dream if that's their dream, and that's where my content comes around, where I'm trying to not jeopardize their access or their, if anything, I'm trying to put a positive spin on what we do as hunters and how we should be an integral part of the deer eradication, or even now the goat eradication problem that is presenting itself. I don't necessarily think it's a problem. Maybe when cars are hitting deer, or those localized areas where there is a problem, there could be a problem, and maybe we need to invest in some time there. But yeah, sure, gee whiz, mate, I'll go 3 or 4 days without seeing a deer. So I don't know. There's some areas that there's no deer problem. Like,
This whole the deer and the goat thing, I do think it's this fantasy of some groups that really just want no non-native animals on the landscape.
yeah,
And they've just got such a hard on to get them. It's that they can't really see or think properly about this whole thing and go, what, you're never wiping them off the landscape. It doesn't matter what you do. These things are here to stay. And, you are living in a fantasy land if you think you're going to wipe them out. And for me, I talk about it a lot, and it's not that I am worried that these animals are never going to be here. That's not the case. What I am worried about is things like 1080 getting thrown out in the wilderness, and then poisoning deer with 1080 and goats with 1080. And I had a really good podcast with Clyde Graff from the Graff Boys, or TV Wild, over in New Zealand, and he's done 20 odd short films and documentaries on 1080 poisoning over there, and they poison deer and goats and possums, which I always find funny because they say 1080's native to Australia, so it doesn't hurt our natives, but it's what New Zealand used to get possums. Just a bit baffling, that one, but I mean, look, I'm no scientist. But that's the one for me is, he did a documentary on the people who got food poisoning from eating a wild pig that was 1080, and they were in hospital and comatose, and just a whole big thing. And for me, I couldn't think of anything worse. We've got such a abundant resource that is definitely sustainable, that we can definitely take as many as we want to keep numbers down, which is probably a pro to actually be honest.
Yeah.
Why are we wanting to throw poison in the mix where you start to put poison is poison, like the name of it? Let's be honest here. There's no safe poison. We don't know, glyphosate was once safe. And now look at it. It's insane to me to think this is the option and the best option, because the people pushing this are sort of anti-hunters and anti-guns. They're willing to coat the landscape with a poison, and I don't get it. It's not going to bring any economic benefit, which hunting does. There's just so many holes to the argument, and that makes me nervous. It's not that I think there's going to be no deer or goats to hunt. It's just the fact that I think, how many of us are going to be wanting to consume the meat if they're dumping poison right throughout the forests? I won't be. I'm not going to risk my family eating that.
Well, even to the point, like in Victoria, they do bait for the wild dogs around private property and stuff like that, in areas where the cattle and stuff are getting attacked by feral dog populations or whatever. And even in those areas, a lot of those areas, you can hunt with your pointers or gun dogs or hounds or whatever. You can take your own domesticated dogs into those areas as well if you'd like. But every time you see those signs and you've got a dog in the car, it's like, it's a scary proposition. That dog might find a bait and eat the bait, then you've just lost your best mate.
Yep.
I don't know if poison is ever warranted in any, like in any scenario where, let's face it, I've been out hunting deer and seen more kangaroos than deer. Like, I don't know. I don't know if the deer are doing that much impact to the deer in the area. You can see their sign, but you will see more kangaroos than you see deer. Maybe the deer are smarter than the kangaroos, but yeah, I think there's a balance that we could strike with the deer and the natives and the bush and the fire reduction and the holistic approach to this
most definitely.
situation that we have. However, yeah, me being biased is I know how tasty those deer are, and I'm sure that if people found out how good that organic free range meat is, they'd be up in arms about 1080 poison as well. And even going back to the who wants to die over 5 days? Like who wants to die over 7 days or even longer? I don't know how long the poison takes to kick in, but I've seen years ago with Khaleesi virus or Mixo with the rabbits, it was horrible to see rabbits running up to the spotlight with disgusting eyeballs and basically blind, Like, I wonder if you filmed the process of them testing that bait on an animal, whether or not people would be for that product, Like they stopped testing shampoos on animals or rabbits or whatever, but they're going to go and poison these animals to see if the poison's effective. Like it just spins me out. It doesn't make sense to me that in this day and age that we're going backwards to talk about poison. It's genuinely going backwards.
Every other option should be pursued before poison, as far as I'm
100%.
concerned. And the next thing is hunters need to do a far better job of portraying ourselves publicly in a better view that the public choose us over poison. Like that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So something's going wrong somewhere in the chain of advocacy that we are not high on the public's mind when they're saying poison or, a bullet. Oh, man, it's a no-brainer. I know if I was to suffer either, I know which one I'd be choosing, and I don't understand why that's not out there, and that's not the main viewpoint and argument that people are putting out there. And there's enough hunters out there. We've got plenty of hunters. We've got plenty of land. We've got limited access, and I feel that's a hindrance to us as well. That's, if we could address all those things. I remember, Clyde actually mentioned about the North American conservation model. He said that, yes, deer are native over there, but they're in abundance and they have no problem managing the population because of the tag system.
Yep.
We could definitely do something similar here, even though they are a non-native.
Yep.
But even natives, I'd love to see us be able to hunt kangaroos, to be honest, and on public land, because if they're in abundance, that's causing an issue in the habitat as well. I don't understand why we can't. Like, I get they're a native animal, but this whole approach that, they're a native, you can't hurt them or kill them or eat them, it's sort of baffling to me as well, because you look at population groups of kangaroos, of crocodiles, they're just exploding because they're native. Like, that makes no sense. We have some very unique understanding when we come to the environment and what we do and how we approach things. Sometimes it is what it is, and I guess hopefully we can only fly the flag and do the best we can, and hopefully people will see what we're doing, like what we're doing, share what we're doing, and get on board. So
I think with the way that I sort of approach that, like you were saying, nothing gets wasted. When you got that deer, you've got dog meat. Often with my offcuts, I don't have a dog myself, but I know family members and friends who do have dogs, and then they're not hunters either. So there's an opportunity there to take your offcuts to someone who owns a dog who doesn't hunt, and generate that community spirit around hunters are providing, like pet food's not cheap, and the stuff that comes in cans isn't good for your dog. My sister, actually, I gave some venison bones, just some sambar bones and some fallow deer bones to her pug, and she said her pug looked like she'd never seen the pug so happy in its life before. Like it turned into a dog again, like what they actually are. Like And she said she goes to the freezer drawer. Every time she opens the freezer door, the dog will run to it, looking for the extra bones that are in there,
More
wanting
bones.
the bones to come out. They're like, it's just a good touch point with the greater community,
Yeah.
a good touch point where, you don't want to give up your prime venison, because it's tasty. It might be nice to give them a roast or whatever, but if you can't part with your hard-earned venison, give someone who doesn't hunt the offcuts for their pet. That's just another touch point that can sort of reach those people that may be on the fence with hunting and years ago the brush, we were painted with rednecks or yahoos or we just in it for killing. But I think that message is slowly changing. I think we're talking about the grip and grin. I think hunters are doing a much better job now. From what I've seen, 5 years ago, even 7 years ago, you'd see the foxes, the photos of the foxes that shouldn't have been in the social, public space. It should have just been shared with friends, but not in the public space. But now I don't see much of that anymore. I think the tides have turned and people are a little bit more aware of what damage can be done from the wrong photo getting into the public forum. So, yeah, my sort of opinion or the way that I live my life is to try and be a normal human being, basically, like being caring, kind, provide, giving where I can, which is supplying pet food to people, supplying meat to people. All those touch points are good. And if people don't understand, like some people don't even know there's deer in Australia. So if you can cook them a meal of venison and say this is running around wild and they're trying to 1080 poison them, those people might be like, well, they're going to poison these animals that taste so good. It could be the turning point where, you could do just that tiny little act may benefit hunting for future generations,
Yeah, most definitely. I think the win going forward is the meat. I think there's no one out there that sort of can argue against that, because it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, the meat itself and providing for people and having them eat good quality meat is where anybody generally will get on board. Yes, you're always going to have people that are vegans or vegetarians that might not come around to that, but the vast majority of people, they are all about that. So if you're talking that it's sustainable, ethical, and, is used to its fullest, that's got to be the win. So, mate, it's been a pleasure.
Awesome, mate. Yeah, it's great to talk to you, Matt. Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to talk to you again, mate. I appreciate you coming on. Love what you're doing. Love the content you put out this year. Cannot wait for more in 2024. You do definitely portray hunting in such a great light, and that's why I wanted you on, obviously. So, mate, keep doing what you're doing, and I really do look forward to seeing what you have installed for 2024.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. Yep, I appreciate you doing the podcast as well, mate. I know you take time out of your busy schedule with family and work and all the stuff. So, yeah, appreciate that you're pushing the message for hunters out there, and, keep fighting the good fight, mate.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate that. And listeners, I hope you've enjoyed it. I have had a great time as always, and bye for now. If you have a topic, guest, question, or any gear that you want to hear about on the podcast, shoot us an email, australianhuntingandbeyond@gmail.com. Alternatively, find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All the links are in the show notes. If you haven't already, make sure you give us a review and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.